We're coming to the end of the session, and maybe we can just talk about the whether the Gambian courts have been impartial in terms of settlements of election petitions. Just to share our ideas on, we saw there's been so many, because when I was writing this, I had to go back all the way to the voter registration with the attestation issue in the case of Banjul, the mayor of Banjul giving out attestation. There was also a petition from the rejected presidential candidates that were seeking nomination. In December also, we saw the presidential elections being contested. Recently, a disqualified member of the candidate for the National Assembly also was contesting the decision of the IEC. So now maybe we can just, Omar, you want to come in?
Yeah, I think I'm not a lawyer, I'm just going to say this based on experience. I think the courts have been really impartial in terms of the rulings that, and the cases that have come up, especially the high-profile cases. I think the problem we have and the dilemma we have is the laws, our laws. Because if the law is very clear, there's nothing you can do about it. Let's say, for instance, the issue of the UBP and the IEC. So the court relied on the law, whether it's a good law or not, but they relied on it, and you cannot challenge it. If the court decides to rely on the law, and the law is there and very clear, there's nothing you can do. On Sabbath's case, the same thing. They relied on the law, and nobody will come out and say the law is not there. So I think the lost opportunity was when the draft constitution was rejected by the Assembly. Then, for me, as far as I'm concerned, I lost hope in terms of transition. The moment it was rejected, I knew, probably on the ballot, I will not have what I want. I will not see the Gambia that I want. Because the Gambia that I want is not just about the Gambia where I will live peacefully. I need to have security in terms of food and every other thing. Security is just not about when there is no conflict. When people are hungry, you cannot call that security. People are insecure, people are hungry. So, but if we don't have laws, good laws, the executive can just manipulate us anyhow they want. And of course, it's users as well. And I think the likes of the Human Rights Commission is one thing that every other Gambian challenge, being the opposition, the one in government, we all challenge the National Human Rights Commission. And the critics of Barrow will say that was his only mistake. Because it has been so proactive in terms of, its dealings. They are not just looking at whether you are Barrow or Dabo. When something is wrong, they say it openly. So probably that is one thing that we are really proud of. And coming to the courts, like you said, I think the problem is the laws. And also, let us not take chances. Let us not be naive. The Human Rights Commission is there. The courts are there. But when they make decisions, like the diaspora voting, the court said they should vote. But at the end, the IEC just said there's no money. But probably the executive will go on.
But I want to come in there. Wasn't it the National Assembly that actually reduced the budget? If I'm not mistaken, that was supposed to fund the diaspora voting.
Yeah. Even if the justice system is delivering, is working, we must not be naive.
Then the issue of accountability comes in, and you mentioned the draft constitution and holding elected officials to account, because there was the president did make a statement that the constitution would come back if he is elected. So now how do we push that? We come to this, yes, yes, to make sure that the draft constitution comes back and the...
We demand answers from him. He should tell us why he anticipated the rejection of the draft.
But I think we should hold the National Assembly members accountable for that. Not the draft constitution.
If we don't speak truth to each other, really, this country will not go anywhere. Everyone will just come and do what they want. Barrow anticipated the rejection simply because he was thinking of staying there for 15 years. His problem was the retroactive life of the draft constitution. Very simple, and nothing else. That was his problem. He did not want his first term to be counted. Simple.
So now moving ahead, there has been a promise made to bring back the draft constitution. We're electing new, well, in office, some are coming back, some might not, but we're having a new parliament, I can say that. How do we now move ahead to make sure that we bring back this draft? Because we keep referring to the draft constitution a lot, so maybe it is something that is important that we should advocate for. So how do we make sure that we you know, make sure that it comes back?
It starts on Saturday.
On Saturday.
Who is going to have the majority at the National Assembly? You don't know, I don't know. If Barrow has the majority at the National Assembly, then he decides what happened there. Not us, not you and me. Those people that are selected by the NPP, I can tell you, majority of them are not going to serve us well. I will tell you this. I'm not a politician, I'm being honest, because I know most of them, I know them. And I listen to their campaign, what they say. They don't know this stuff.
But now, Omar, the media now comes in, civil society comes in. When we talk about that they won't serve us well, how do we now make sure that we counter that before it happens? That we don't just sit back, like he was saying, we don't just sit back and just let things happen.
It's difficult.
How? No, we educate the people, we can recall, we can educate the people, yeah.
You cannot tell me the civil society has not been doing their job. The NCCE, you know, has been proactive from the issue of the constitution. I have traveled with them. You know, they were giving very, very good messages. But look, people are hungry. If you go there, you talk to them, you left. Somebody will come and give them money, and they will do what. So now it
goes back to the theme and elections, you know, delivering development. Because if there is that development, if there is that economic and social, you know, we're comfortable economically and socially, then we wouldn't vote because somebody gives us money. Maybe somebody else can come in and Sanaba, and then yes.
I think what we could do to ensure that the draft constitution, whether it is going to be touched or untouched, I cannot say that. But it was very obvious for all of us that the draft constitution was going to be rejected. We've seen all the signs, we've heard all of them, but I think for the civil society, we were not very active to ensure that those things that were coming in, we were able to understand. From the get-go, we've seen cabinet positions on some sections of the draft constitution. That we don't want this, we don't want this. It is against this, it is against that. So from that point, it was like we were all interested in reading the newspapers. But what do we do to ensure that these things, that these opinions that they're forming, we are able to do something to address it before it goes to the parliament. So I think the civil society, that's a lesson that we told them, that we waited so much that we were not able to do. The time we spent calling the MPs and giving them letters to say that we want you to support the draft constitution was very late. And one thing that I think civil society organizations are also developing is to ensure that their constituents, the MPs, they're able to have accountability mechanisms, that we create town hall meetings for them, to have an interface with their National Assembly members and put them to account. To say that you've been voted based on these policies, how far you've gone with those things. So again, for the draft constitution, such a thing could also be created to ensure that we create those accountability mechanisms at the constituency level, where people are very much aware of the content of the draft, because this is an opinion that came from them. But now it is to say, what are the issues that are dividing the two camps? And obviously, like he said, if the draft constitution should come back to the parliament the way it is going to be rejected. If it is touched, it is going to be rejected. For instance, if the MPP has a majority and they say the other clause that says that Barrow's force will be counted or any other thing that is not favorable to them, they're going to support it. But for the UDP who massively voted yes for the draft constitution, they're now going to say it is a political and then they're going to reject it. So obviously, now it is for us to ensure that there are those accountable mechanisms at the constituency level, that these people are able to have an interface with their people, and that people are able to But one thing that may not come from the custom is that water conflict, they are building up. I've listened to Mr. reference the Ghana conflict, if I'm not correct. Sahel, that how it built up. At some point, people lost confidence in the institutions that are created. And the same thing is happening. Every day we see on social media how people are breaking to that. It is because they will tell you that when I take a key to the police, before I return to my house, I see the person on the street. People are beginning to lose confidence in the institutions that are created. And the Gambia is also at that. Again, what is happening, another conflict that is happening right now is that IEC, the peaceful nature of our 2021 elections, was something that all of us are taking ownership of. But IEC at one point had opened a window of violence for all of us. And that is to say, for instance, from the nomination, where CA and TMC have taken the IEC to court, and the court says that these people, their rejection was not in line with the proceeding, and something should have been done. What would have happened if the CA and the TMC insisted at the point that their names were going to be on the ballot? And this is what is going to happen. And also our elections are conducted such that it is left to the discretion of the IEC. Let's say the public scrutiny. It is a very good practice, but it is not in law. So when you say public scrutiny, very good practice that will help in our country, because it helps us to know how much, for instance, when it comes to resources that the president accumulates before he becomes a president, and how much he has before his second term starts. But if those things are there for the IEC to say it is our discretion for the public scrutiny, and the time that was also given, those were violent solutions that the IEC had cleared. But again, another is the tenure of the commissioners. You go to the IEC website, and you even have a conversation with them about the tenure of their commissioners. They will tell you that this is not for us to even put this on our website, because the appointment comes from the president and not from the commission. You go to their website, you will not see the tenure of the commission. Even their biography, if you read it, sometimes will be more than 2-3 people whose biography are on their website. Now, the chairman, when people talk about debate, his tenure has come back. It is difficult for you to even establish what the chairman was about, because you cannot have a reference. So these are kind of situations. And their deliberate silence on the allegations made by the UDP is also a very serious conflict that we are facing. You cannot have a party come up with those numbers to say that these people are illegally registered. And you said it is not your business because you are focused on something else. Come to say that this is false or this is true. But okay, all right. You're telling people that it's not our business because it is past. It is one of the problem. Obviously, it is. And this is going to contribute into the parliamentary elections. Because at some point, these two parties, for instance, the GDC and the UDP, they contested the elections results of the courts because they felt that there were irregularities. So if they should come out, and we were all asking, if the courts cannot accept you based on your failure to respect one or two rules, then come to the public courts. And now they are in the public courts, they are easily telling people that they cannot answer those questions.
But for those issues too, Sanaba, there were also things that were put in place, like the revising courts and things like that, that no one really went to. Even the issue of the voter registration that we had in Banjul. When IEC opened the register, nobody really went to contest, you know, the names that were there. And I also want to talk about, you know, we're living in a democratic country now, we can say. Even the issue with the thieves being let go, there are also conditions, I think, that you can hold a particular you know, somebody that has made an offense and things like that. Like Omar says, I'm not a lawyer, but I know, you know, 72 hours or something like that, you cannot hold, is that right? You cannot hold somebody that has committed a particular offense beyond a certain time. So, you know, and these are things that we also look at in terms of democracy. You also don't want to infringe on the thieves' rights to be held without maybe evidence and things like that. So, but these are ways, you know, we have to keep the conversation going. Okay, I'll have Mr. Jao and then the commissioner, and then we'll wrap up. We actually have to wrap up, really.
Anita. Okay, thank you. With regards to the draft constitution, I have a feeling that this new National Assembly, the incoming National Assembly, would actually pass something. I'm assuming that the NPP gets an absolute majority, then definitely, I have no doubt that will be the first item they will think about bringing back the draft constitution. But I have also no doubt that they are going to tamper with it and, kind of all those sections or provisions that they objected to, they will remove them and then bring it there, knowing that whatever they bring to the National Assembly will pass. But if they don't have the absolute majority, then, I mean, that's another issue altogether. As my friend said, probably opposition would object to any, anything that is removed from the first draft. Then the IEC, I think the problem with the IEC is capacity. I think they lack the capacity. I think they need to be one. And let's get a new IEC. Probably Mr. Jallo being there by because there are definitely things not quite right with the IEC. I mean, like he said, go to their website. It's virtually empty. I mean, even the electoral laws will hardly even access some of those things at the IEC website, And again, I think they need a legal department, a properly functioning legal department. We've seen what happened during the presidential election, the nominations, they rejected certain candidates and the courts ruled against them and other things. So if they had a very good, effective legal department, definitely, they would have advised them to interpret some of these laws in a much better way. Again, we've seen the demographic of the constituencies. Some constituencies have less than 2,000 voters, others have almost 50,000 voters, and they don't have the same voice and the same, mandate in the National Assembly. That is definitely not democracy. I think they are using the law. Then, is it the other question is the courts?
Impartial.
In the way probably I may not be competent enough to make that interpretation here, but one thing I know, all the decisions the courts have made with regards to challenges in the elections, most of the all, virtually all of them have been, they have never ruled against the impunity here. Whether the president or at the National Assembly level, it's very, very rare. Whether it's impartiality or not, probably I'm not confident enough to that. But that is my observation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Make a quick
interjection.
I'm actually not a lawyer for the IEC. The IEC does not have an in-house lawyer. So that is why, as and when they have problems, they hire lawyers from the outside. I am one of the lawyers that they would hire, normally. But as you rightly pointed out, one of the recommendations that have come out strongly from the international and local observers is that there is need, and we have indeed advised them that there is need for an in-house legal unit or department to provide routine legal advice on a daily basis, because that's what they really need, and not to wait until everything falls down and you look for lawyers externally to come and pick up the pieces. So that is actually quite progressive, and I think they are willing. The will is there to actually accept that recommendation and to make that reform as far as the institution is concerned. The other thing, of course, is with respect to the courts. As lawyers, and I'm not the only lawyer in the house, Mr. Juke is also a lawyer, I hasten to add. We are usually very cautious when it comes to commenting or critiquing the courts or the work of the courts, because judicial independence and independence of the judiciary is sacrosanct. So in other words, we take it as it is. Of course, of course, you can look at it from an academic standpoint. Sometimes the court can deliver a ruling or a judgment as a legal scholar or academic. If you feel strongly about it, either for or against, you can put something into writing. That's for academia. But I think it's also important for us to realize that the courts can only deal with what is put before them. And now here, we're averting our minds to the doctrine of separation of powers. It is not the duty of the courts to actually make law, as Omar rightly highlighted. When they're confronted with a particular legal problem, they look at the rules. What does the law say?
And they don't necessarily make recommendations like national.
Exactly. Exactly.
We make recommendations.
Exactly. So when the law is clear and is in black and white, the court has no option but to apply it. Now, of course, that could possibly ignite a debate within civil society circles. That, okay, yes, the court is right, this is what the law says, but we feel strongly that this law really is not in the best interest of society. So can we start something to initiate law reform, for example, engage parliament, engage the stakeholders. Those are the institutions that are competent to actually change the law. But sometimes the courts, I believe, are unfairly criticized because a lot of these things are actually beyond the scope of the work they are called upon to do. They are called upon to interpret and enforce the law. So that is the law. What is on paper, no matter how unpalatable it may seem, is what they should be bound by. Now, those of us in civil society, of course, have the luxury of going beyond the scope of what the courts can do. We can look at the decision and say, okay, if this is what Parliament voted for, if this is what the Act says, okay, that's fine, that's well and good. The court have done their job, but we want it to be changed. So now we're going to lobby Parliament, we're going to lobby the executive, we're going to lobby stakeholders to make sure that there is a reform, and there is change in the law. So I just thought I would highlight this so that we can put it.
Okay. So one more. Thank you so much. Yes.
Just quickly, I just want to agree. I think there's a lot of things that needs to change with the IEC, and recommendations have been made. Their communication is an issue, and of course, if you have an institution like that, you must be able to communicate. And one of the things that we even told them in our recommendation, the period in which, apart from their website, they need really to step up. But even during the period of the results, just by keeping quiet, allowed people to start speculating. There was about 6, 7 people started even having their own results. You know, even coming back telling us that we are very quiet. That would just make people, you know, so they have those problems. The issue of having a legal unit has been raised. Having a legal department has been raised, and I'm sure they will take it on. They will take it on, and they need to do a better job. Yes, again, communication. When UDP allegations were made, whether those allegations were true or not is another issue. I even myself sent information to UDP about the registration period. We didn't end on the 21st of June. It ended up 11. I was even up to Mankamankuna around that period. Even that was flawed. Maybe IEC could have told them, listen, registration will stop in June. These people were registered, you know. So, but anyway, that is not my job, to, you know, but I just felt that yes, communication will solve, because right now we're living in the age of everybody is a journalist. You need an Android phone to, you know, to make up your stories. So they need to be on top of things. But just one quick point. On the 9th, we will have parliamentarians. Whether we like them or not, whether they are very competent or not, we have to deal with them since you refuse to go and put yourself as a candidate. So what do? We cannot abdicate. We cannot. And we, at the level of the National Human Rights Commission, we continue to engage them, especially the standing committee. And we started that last year, and it was very effective. So the bills that are even passed, they now call us as an institution, subject matter institution specialist. So whenever there are laws, like the Election Act, there are a lot of things, it was not passed, but hopefully in the next parliament it will be passed. But we sat with them and to revise it and said, no, this needs to change, that needs to change. And despite the political party affiliation, they were listening to us because we were giving them comparative what happens in Ghana, for example. Prisoners, the right of prisoners to vote. What about remand prisoners? They have not been convicted. Why should we deprive them? There are many other things that we saw. What about the funding of political parties? You see, politicians are all funding, whether they are UDP, NPP. When we started talking about if you need to regulate funding of political parties, when they are in a strong position, they ignore it. When they are not in a very strong position, then they cry foul and say, hey, now this person has more money. So when these ones come and give you Sakuma, bag of rice, and the others have these 5 bags, it's an issue. But these are things we need to regulate. But we need to, whatever parliamentarians we have, let them understand that they are representing the people. And let us make sure that we make them work. So these are just things that I said we cannot abdicate. Despite no matter who we have we have to keep them on their toes, civil society, members of the constituency, and others. The courts, I agree with you. But you see the courts again, politicians are coming. I remember when a particular decision was made, everybody now was saying the courts are now independent, especially when they overturn the decision of the president. You know, politicians will be politicians. Now when it went the other way around, they said, these people are useless. Actually, it happens to the National Human Rights Commission every day. They slap us this side, they slap us that side. Then one minute they said we are pro-Barrow, then the other day I was told that I'm the worst enemy of Barrow. They should not have made the chairperson. So, because it shows that the courts are doing the right job. Because those institutions are not in the business of selling ice cream. So today, they should be guided by their mandate, they should be guided by their laws. I'm not saying that they don't get things wrong. And we open to public opinion. But we cannot always be driven by public opinion. Because we should be driven by the laws, the framework, and our mandate. So, but I just love this conversation. As a country, we need to talk. Whether we agree or not, this is how we develop our society. Keep your MPs busy.
Thank you very much. It has been a very fruitful conversation indeed. And I'll just give the Robina or Mr. Mastic to maybe say a few words in terms of what you have observed and any other input.
Thank you.
Please.
So, thank you all, really, for your incredibly thoughtful remarks today. This was an incredibly illuminating session. I appreciate it. And for the excellent moderation. I want to acknowledge the moderator as well. This is my first visit to the Gambia, but I am very familiar with the role that civil society has played here since 2016 in supporting this country's democratic experiment. I know many of you were involved in efforts around the Constitution process, and I want to acknowledge those efforts and hope that they serve as encouragement for you to continue your efforts after this election. Even if you weren't successful in what you wanted to achieve once, it should not be discouragement to you. I will attempt to offer just a few observations based on what I heard today, if I may. The first is, give yourselves some credit. The country has been in this situation only since 2016. It's 6 years, all right? And a democracy is not made in 6 years. So the work that you have been putting into building the Gambia as a democratic country is to be commended, and I hope that you continue it, irrespective of some of the challenges or shortcomings that you have illuminated today. You just had a presidential election with 89% voter participation. That's astounding. All right? Which brings me to the next observation. Turnout. It may be lower in the legislative election. Maybe. That's actually not that uncustomary, okay? In my own country, we will hold an election this coming November. The turnout will probably be lower. Historical data shows that it'll be lower than was the presidential election that we had in 2020. The fact that turnout may be lower also should not be discouragement to you, but I do think it points to something that many of you have spoken about today, which is simply the need to have voters understand the relevance of the legislature, the parliament, and the function it plays in a democratic state, and the need for those elected representatives to be true representatives of the constituents they are elected to serve. So that's my next observation. It's probably too late at this point to have people understand that more than they already do, because your election is Saturday. But with it will come a new mandate for the National Assembly and a new opportunity for all of you to help people understand that and indeed to help the elected officials understand that they are elected there to serve the entire constituencies they've been elected to represent, not just their voters. Which, you know, it's not entirely a bad thing that people may vote for a candidate because they like the individual or because they're a member of a particular political party. In fact, that animates elections. It causes voter dynamism and support, a desire for participation. But once elected, there's definitely a need for those elected officials to represent the country through the constituencies, the entirety of the voters they've been elected to represent. You all, I know, realize you have an incredibly important role to play in that. You have touched today on a number of the ways to do it, from more oversight and monitoring of projects that are undertaken, to educating voters, to, in fact, supporting or helping the actual elected officials understand those roles. There's going to be a new opportunity to re-engage on those efforts as a result of this election, and I hope that you will all continue to do so on the basis of trying to create, one, more accountability in elected governance, but two, and importantly, from the standpoint of institutions, a required balance between the legislative branch and the executive. And we at IRI will hope to be able to continue to walk with you in doing that. We have felt privileged that we have been able to engage in this country in the way that we have since the dramatic transition that occurred. Robina has served as really one of our leading directors around the world in supporting our programmatic efforts to support you, and we hope to be able to continue to do so moving forward. So I'm encouraged by what I have understood today for the following reason. Not because there are no problems here, there are no challenges in the Gambia, of course not. You face, in fact, some very considerable challenges. And I appreciate your comments, sir, a lot, because you really crystallized, I think, what a lot of the lived reality of many of the citizens in the country and what they experience day to day. I hope, though, let me ask you a question. Will you vote? Yes. Yes. So they say you shouldn't ask a question unless you know the answer. I took a risk because I wasn't sure where he stood.
I'm voting for the independent, like in the presidential election. I
but okay, so I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you will still vote, and I hope that people who may watch this or hear from you in the future, from each of you, will continue to hear that message, because I don't frankly know what the good alternative is, right? And I'm sure you understand that better than I, in fact, given that you have lived in the system where not so long ago votes really didn't matter. And then last, just so Omar, you may be a journalist by profession, but I really hope that you consider being a candidate at some time in the future, because you're very passionate when you speak, and your oratory skills are really something. So I hope that you may stand for office in the future, and you as well, Adam. Again, and to each of you, that you not be discouraged too much by the current state of things. In closing, I'll just say what I'm encouraged by is that you all very much seem to understand where you are now and what needs to happen next. And that's not always the case when I travel to different places, all right? Where in April I've already been to 4 countries on 4 continents. That's not always the case, but it is very encouraging to know that you all, as leaders of what has become a very vibrant civil society in the country, seem to very well understand where you are and what needs to happen next in this country. And so with that, I will stop and thank you all again really so much for your valuable insights and commentary today.